Our goal today is just walk through some of the things that exist today, kind of state of the state, as well as some of the things that are coming soon to clouds near you, and talk about what we think the greatest uses are for this. So primarily, Scott will be running things today, and I'm here for color commentary, so I'll turn it over to Scott.
Hello and welcome, everybody. It is so good to see you, kind of see you, maybe see you. My name is Scott Lewis, and I've been part of Burwood for just a little bit of time here, about 6-7 months. Really excited to be part of this team and part of people bringing this to you. Been doing the training, computer, teaching, all of that for, well, you can tell it's been more than a day. So a while. A couple of things I want to tell you about. One, really want to encourage you to use that chat, ask questions, raise a hand, stop us if there's anything that doesn't quite fit or you have additional questions, point of clarification, anything like that, because interaction is really good. Second thing is, I love this topic. I like all the topics that I teach, but I really enjoy being able to bring information to people, and because of that, I may start talking a little fast, and when that happens, sometimes people might lose me. So again, please just stop me, tell me to slow down, something like that, because I get very, very pumped up and excited about topics and things like that. And don't panic if Doug has to bring me back on topic, because I will tangent onto all these different things, because for most of you, you've been playing with artificial intelligence for a little bit, and so you know that everything that made sense yesterday, well, they've changed this, and that model's different, and there's this new tool that just got released, or this one's coming out next week, or this one's available for the pay stream, and yeah, it all changes just that quick. But we're going to try to make it all make sense to you and give you some ideas of different things to consider and think about as you try to navigate this just constantly changing landscape. It really is amazing. It's a lot of fun to try to keep up on. So our agenda today is we're going to talk about, well, when somebody says Google, and a lot of times they'll say Gemini or Google Cloud or Google Services, right? Google has a really neat habit of talking about a lot of different things under these monikers. So we're going to try to break some of those down just on a very high level. Then we're going to get into this relatively new concept or new terminology. We're talking about AI fluency. And we'll talk about, people are using AI. So adoption as a, hey, I need you to use it, has kind of gone by the wayside. It depends on the numbers. We'll look at some of those. But how do I make you use it, or get you to use it, or get you to adopt it so that it actually makes your life a little easier? So we'll talk about that practice loop, give you some suggestions for that, some real adoption areas, breaking things down. Use kind of an artificial story, but kind of bring that home, and then some recommendations or some tools in there. As Doug mentioned, he's going to be the color commentary. We're going to turn that over to him every now and again, just for plugging some things in, because there's a lot of information. And as I mentioned, I logged in today. We're excited. We went over this yesterday. We're excited as a group. We're really excited about everybody that's here. And then there's 2 new reports that go, oh, look, these new tools that have just been added. Oh, great. So we'll get a chance to see what's going on here. All right. First thing we want to do is just kind of looking at that high level breakdown. When people say Google, or I'm using Google for education or Google Enterprise, what are they talking about? And you almost have to ask them exactly what are you using it for, and what can't you do to determine where people are. So from a very high level, you've got this, the Google for Education fundamentals, kind of that base level, is really focused on the foundational, that class management stuff, basic institutional communication. I was reading through the details. I kind of thought that almost like that K6 level idea, because it does have some AI in it, but it's more like the stuff that we were used to from a while back. That is, maybe telling you that you have a word that's misspelled or something like that. So you're going to get the big ones. You're going to get Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, Forms, Classroom, Gmail, Google Meet, some regular foundational security controls and things like that. And then you can get over into the Workspace side, which is in the middle. You start talking about the AI Pro for Education. This is really geared towards the educators and staff that are focused on enhancing that productivity and getting a hold of some of those tools that are the generative AI tools. And this platform, this space is constantly changing, and it's amazing some of the things you can do. So again, it's that generative AI in Workspace. That's what Google calls it. They call it the Google Workspace. Amazing for content creation, amazing for summarizing. We're going to get into some use cases where you start to see all these tools that are available just to different job classifications. But really, it is about how fast you can create materials, either from a student's perspective, turning that material in, or from an educator or administrator perspective, being able to get that information out to people. So there's a lot of the existing Workspace tools like the docs and things, they get enhanced with that AI, with Gemini. And a lot of times you may see announcements talking about, we've added Gemini into the application. So if you're working in Gmail, for instance, you see that little blue diamond up in there in the right-hand corner. If you're working in Sheets or working in any of the other tools, you'll see that blue diamond. You can actually use that right there. The advantage of that for your staff or for yourself is that you don't have to prompt or tell the AI exactly what you're doing. So one of the things that people immediately start to miss is that if I open up or start using the AI tool in the actual application, it's already grounded in what I'm trying to do. So it can actually be a huge shortcut, and I don't have to give it a bunch of tools or give it a bunch of information that it already knows. I'm already working in that. Okay, that's the education side. Then you move over to Gemini Enterprise, and that's where things start to change. Things become scalable. There's all kinds of institutional intelligence. You're really talking about working with stuff that's very, very large amounts of data. So you're not talking about 30 students or even 150 students or a staff or something like that. You're talking about dealing with the data that is the entire institution for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here, and this is where the secret decoder ring comes in, because middle column within Workspace, Google starts calling things Gemini, but then they use Gemini Enterprise to be the full name now is Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform, right? Which is that tool set to build things. So from a metaphor perspective, the middle column of Gemini is like, you have a fancy sports car that you can go driving. It has amazing capabilities and tools, but it does the things that the manufacturer intended you to do with it. You can go fast, you can look good. If you want to build your own version of the car, have a different approach to do things, that's where you need to start building things yourself, and that's where Gemini Enterprise comes to play, where you're actually doing things within the Google Cloud side of the house as opposed to the Google Workspace side of the house. And I see a question did come in, so I want to quick see if we need to answer something. Or was that something we put out there for a Q&A?
All things are possible.
Sorry, I'm not saying it. Corey, help out if there's anything we need to do. But anyway, that's the decoder ring part, but we can probably move on to the next one, Scott.
Absolutely. So real quick, the other part of this is just as Doug was talking about, you get this access to the Veritex AI. You also, if you start doing research or start looking into this side of it, there's all these different tools and models that, and they're almost like, I really want to say it's almost like a half-built tool that you can then turn around and customize to what you need it to do. Google is very good about getting you, I guess you'd call it halfway there with some of these really neat enterprise level models. Yep. Big thing does become your organizational.
Yep, and I found the Q&A. I did find it. So Brian, thank you for the question. And this is exactly why we have the decoder ring slide in here. So when we joined meetings with Google talking about messaging and how we differentiate what Gemini Enterprise looks like, they started leading off with NotebookLM, which is available in Google AI Pro for Education or Gemini for Education. They keep on changing, but I think it's Education Plus now. So yes, the tools exist on both sides of the house, and that doesn't help with the clarity of things. But in general, there's a lot of fancy tools that you can access just within the Gemini Workspace capabilities, including NotebookLM. And yes, NotebookLM is something you can leverage using Gemini Enterprise licensing as well. Sometimes it does come down to the if you're interested in something within Gemini Enterprise, the licensing for that, if you're looking to get it for a group of people, may make more sense to spend your money there versus within the workspace. But if you're using the free version of fundamentals and have access to tools, go to town, use those things. It will change monthly at least, and probably more. So it's kind of hard to capture the exact state of the art right now, but it is confusing. But certainly NotebookLM is an amazing tool that is accessible in both Workspace and Gemini Enterprise.
And free and all the other places. I say it's an amazing tool. But at the enterprise level, just real quick to wrap this up, is where you also start getting those hooks for the third-party applications. So like ServiceNow, Jira, some of the other things, some of the other tools that you might be using, and being able to hook Gemini or hook the AI directly back into that. One of the things I love to do is be able to create infographics, especially when I can do them. Something like this a few years ago probably would have taken me the better part of several hours. I have no qualms telling you this took me about 3 minutes, and 2.5 of them were letting the AI generate it. Now, I do have a little bit of experience in prompt engineering, so I told it exactly what I was looking for, but I gave it the websites, told it what I was looking for, and this is what I got just that quick. So in terms of being able to create information or create different ways to present information, that's one of the big advantages that you're seeing with all these different tools, to include the Google ecosystem. So we talked a little bit, or we mentioned that the idea that we're looking at AI adoption. Well, all of the numbers and all of the reports and all of the surveys tell us that that's kind of taking care of itself. You've got somewhere between, depends on which report you happen to read, but somewhere between 75 and 80% of the population is using AI for at least something, right? We've got it on our phones, even if we didn't want it. We've got it in our cars. We can talk to different things. We've been talking to various devices in our houses for a long time, and then all of a sudden now they extended capability because they hook those into different AI models. So people using AI and getting more comfortable with its use is no longer really that mountain that we have to tackle. Where you start to run into issues is only about 50% of the people trust AI. I happen to think that's probably a good thing. We'll talk about why in just a couple of minutes. The part where it starts to break down, for me, in my perspective, becomes this idea that people are hiding that they're using AI to get there. So we're not talking about the system, maybe not the one that's actually on their computer, or they're using those incognito modes, things like that. Or the other place where you see this pop up is, I know that you used AI to solve this problem. What did you do? Well, I just asked it. So this consistency about prompting or sharing tools across even a department is where some of this really starts to break down. So again, about 60% of the people hide their AI use. That becomes a problem because a lot of institutions, a lot of organizations, a lot of companies, regardless of the spectrum. Let me tell you something. I really want to point this out. These particular numbers came from several education-focused surveys. But these numbers only change by 1%, 2%, 3% depending on the industry. These are universal issues, universal concerns, universal things that organizations are having to deal with. So that, yes, everybody knows what they're doing. Only about half the people trust it. Everybody's kind of hiding, or at least they're not giving you the full extent of what they're doing with it. Because there isn't a single adoption or single system, you start to break down really at the governance level. That is, where are those guardrails in terms of using? And then the shocker, only about 40% of institutions have any sort of AI policy in place, whether that's how it's to be used, even something as simple as which tools are available to use. Say, hey, you can use Gemini, but we don't want you using, a Chat GPT or something like that. even something as simple as that, many institutions, many organizations don't even have that down. And that's how fast this changes. All right. So, well, how do we kind of fix all this? You know, what are some tools that people use to kind of get through this? AI adoption succeeds when people build that fluency. That is, I know you're using it. I want you to be able to use it to address certain problems. I want you to be able to use it to make your work life easier, to make what you're doing easier to get to. So, what does that fluency unlock for you? Well, it reduces risk by making the hidden AI visible. When people are constantly talking about what they're doing or constantly using things, they want to, or they start to share what is best practice for a prompt. And we talk about, one of the things people will talk about is building a prompt library so that people that are involved in a particular a job function can go there and say, I don't need to rewrite the wheel every single time. I just use this. That adds consistency. That's a huge plus. Builds confidence, so people start to understand or use the AI a little bit more, get to be a little more trusting about it. Turns that AI from a novelty into practical workflow. And this I absolutely am a fan of because, as I mentioned, I've been around more than a day, and there were times or have been times that you may remember where technology changed and we were doing the same thing or have been doing the same thing just with a new tool. AI allows us to rethink how we're doing things. And when you get an entire group, there is a true synergistic effect. I hate to use that term. I know it's overused. But there is that effect where people are talking about, well, why can't we do it this way? Can we possibly make this easier? How can we move this around? Really has the possibility of changing and really engaging people. It connects that governments to everyday work instead of just some kind of abstract policy. People start to be able to see why you don't do certain things or why we're only using certain tools. Creates momentums that leaders can measure and scale. Measure is the important one, right? To be able to say, well, a particular process used to take us 3 days. Now it takes us 3 hours. Those are things that can easily be measured. And improves the decision quality. One of the things you'll constantly hear us here at Burwood talk about is that human in the loop. You will read all kinds of, or see in the news, all kinds of really, really bad things that happen when somebody just clicked a button, asked a question, hit send, and it's either wrong, it's completely made up, some of my favorite stories, just something's gone completely wrong. But once you start talking to people about, here's the guide rails, here's how we're going to do those things, here's kind of the standard we're measuring against, here's how to make sure that when you put in your question or you build those tools, that you're having it check the correct source material. All of those things then become second nature. And it is a lot of fun. It produces a lot of energy when people get excited about saying, oh, you mean I don't have to go back and reread the 400-page document that I just asked the AI to summarize for me because it tells me when I see the number or when I see the statement that it's on page 17 of the third document? Yep, click here to see page 17 of that third document. Those are the kind of
things. Cut to the chase on something like, if you haven't yet start using NotebookLM, it is the most amazing tool to get someone saying, I see the value of what AI can bring. So I know that Brian mentioned that the NotebookLM, but for anyone here, if there's one thing you take from this and you haven't done it yet, please go play with NotebookLM because the value is immediately obvious.
And they're constantly evolving. As a matter of fact, there's a new thing they just announced this morning that they said available for all the people that are paying a whole bunch of money, but they're actually going to roll it all the way down to the free accounts. Just an amazing tool. We'll talk a little bit about it coming up here. All right. Well, that's all well and good, Scott, but what exactly is going on? So the issue that happens is there's kind of this trust gap that ends up developing between, unfortunately, between people that are very into a new tool. AI is definitely the one, and either people that don't really understand it, don't really understand how it's used, or that there's a lot of stories out there about people being told, well, here's the tool, click here, use the tool. And here's how you, even to add, here's how you use the tool. Well, that's great, but you didn't tell me what I was trying to get with the tool. And I'm having to check the tool, and you actually have increased the amount of work that I'm actually doing because I'm having to go back and check. I'm not sure where this is. I'm not sure where that is. And you end up with kind of this process breakdown. So that's what we mean when we talk about what erodes trust when it comes to adopting this thing, or when we talk about fluency with AI in general. It has a tendency to be this one size fits all, right? So we take this black box tool, we don't really understand how it works, we've heard a lot of acronyms, and we just kind of put it out there. Then we don't trust the accuracy, we don't trust the reliability, and I'll tell you what, for a new user who gets hit one time, that's all it will take, where there's a little bit of hallucination, they get called on the carpet for it, they weren't even sure what they were looking for to begin with, and it is over. I'm never trusting that box ever again. Fear of being replaced. Then you've heard those stories. And there's no guardrails or clear policy. Again, only about 40% of institutions actually have an active policy. How do we address those? Well, here's how to build trust. And you can almost see where they're almost a one-for-one, do exactly the opposite, right? So talk about transparency and how that tool works, or how it can make, or that really kind of that directly adapting a tool to fit a particular work issue. Honesty about limits. That is that governance, putting that policy in place that says, hey, we can use it for this, we can use it for that, but we don't use it for these other things. Even if it's an ecosystem, we spend a lot of time talking about NotebookLM because it is that amazing of a tool. Well, there's some things that it's really good with, and some things that you can do with it, and some things that you might have to take a look at and go, I know NotebookLM can do this thing, but when we're dealing with this kind of information, this kind of source material, we are absolutely not doing it that way. So building in certain limits. Human oversight, I talked about that, human in the loop is absolutely important. And then visible governance on a clear policy. Getting that buy-in from people so they understand, because in their private lives, they know or have seen, or their children or their grandkids, or somebody is using it and they're doing all of these amazing, wonderful things, and they go to work and they can't. Well, wait a second, I'm using the same tool. Right. So, but here's why we have these other concerns. Here's why we have to be a little more judicious in how we're using the tool. Getting that buy-in is really, really important, and it builds that trust. Somebody's listening to me.
Yep, and I'd like to jump in and just say that when we talked about the workspace related activities and the Gemini enterprise related activities of how things are deployed, I like to view it as there's personal productivity and enterprise productivity. And the governance side, much more important, obviously, on the enterprise part of that. So as you're looking at deploying chatbots, I think we've all had experiences in the past few years of someone just threw a chatbot in front of something and you get a lot of garbage answers. And that's where trust is absolutely eroded. So if you're going to do experiments, do them small, have a small test group. Don't roll things out until you build the confidence that there's value add tools, that human in the loop on things that require it, et cetera. So Scott, I'm going to say we're running a little bit behind on time, so let's move on to the next stuff.
All right. So real quick, just questions to think about. Where is your institution losing that trust? What would you do to earn it back if you had the magic key? And you do. It's called AI. Okay, it is right there for you. So how do we get and address these things? Well, these things that start to affect what you're doing. These one-size-fits-all rollouts have a tendency to ignore team dynamics or ignore how teams are different across an institution. And that becomes an issue. Most of the time, this is happening because people are pressed for time. This has to be rolled out. We have to have it within the next month. So everybody gets subjected to the same training or the same information sheet. It doesn't address some of these concerns. So we talk about faculty, advisors, IT, and clerks. They all need something just a little bit different. It's how they're going to use that tool. So where's the start? You start where the tasks are repetitive, high volume, low risk. And the low risk, it becomes really, really important to this. This is where we put our trust in our people, because people are the most familiar with what they have to do. They'll tell you, oh my goodness, if I have to type this thing one more time, it's just driving me nuts. So they are the ones, they become our subject matter experts when we want them to map that workflow. And this is where we get back, we can even harken back to, can we do that better? Now that we have access to a new tool, can we actually do this a little bit better? So getting them to map how that actually, what that actually looks like. Matching the tool to the correct job, we're about to talk about that. And then let the relevance, not the mandates, drive that adoption. So you're going to see people pick up that because they start to see how that tool starts to work for them.
Yeah, and I'll add that one of the nice things about AI, or it's going to force some conversations around those workflows, it may be that there are steps that are in place only because that's the way we've always done it, because it was hard to bring data together in a way that could skip over steps because we don't have to do that. So make sure you look at understanding what you're trying to accomplish, re-envision what is possible, because AI used to map out existing workflows may be wasted effort.
All right, so we're just going to take a few minutes to go through these. So we just pulled out 4 roles that people generally see: faculty, advising, IT, admin, and clerks. These basic repetitive tasks that people are constantly doing, having to deal with, and say, okay, well, what can AI do that's going to make this a lot easier and happen a lot faster? And I want to stress that this is before we get into the really neat tools or get into some of the really deep dives that people can do with these particular tools. So we talk about, again, you know, when you go back to, and you're talking to your people, you say, what's that one repetitive high volume task? And the neat thing about this question is, put 5 people in a room that are all doing essentially the same job. They will all name it with a drop of a hat, snap of a finger. So your faculty, right? They've got to do that syllabus, lesson planning, alignment, right? People will spend hours updating this. They have to make sure that all these new rules and standards now match the new material that's come out from a particular publisher. I'm not doing any of that. Okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to start from scratch, and I'm not going to spend hours upon hours reading it all, because just in regular Gemini, I can put all of the syllabus, the new goals into Gemini and say, tell me where these align, where I'm going to need to make adjustments, make some suggestions. Let's go out and look at best practice. What is my publisher suggesting? What are other people doing? Gemini has the ability to bring all of that in. It's a huge time saver in terms of just getting me started. One of the biggest things about AI to impress upon people is it isn't going to be the end all be all, but it's a great place to get started and get off the ground and get some ideas flowing. We talk about those differentiated learning materials.
Yep. Scott, if I could pause for 1 second.
Yeah.
So the other piece of that is, it is amazing. You can put something in and get an answer back. Consider giving people prompt engineering training so they understand how to submit a good query, and then how to say, okay, now take that response and pretend you're this type of person and give me your feedback on that response. You know, look at it from another teacher, look at it from a student's perspective, look at it from an accreditation perspective. What do we need to do? And use it to pressure test the answers it gives you. The second and third iterations are always much, much better than the first, even though the first can seem amazing and think this is great. Training people to not just take that first answer is very important.
Absolutely. I probably should have included that I spent 15 years in the classroom, secondary education in California. Did a lot of that with mild to moderate disability. So being able to differentiate learning material is a huge thing to me. At least it was. I spent a lot of time trying to do that. Now with Gemini, NotebookLM, I can say, take this transcript, this material, and I need to adapt it for this learner, this type of learner. I need to adapt it for that kind of learner. I need to adapt it for this kind of learner. Same material, 3 different outputs. It takes a while to generate, but I'm not doing it all by hand. And I can go in and work with those materials, the output, to make them exactly right for my particular need. Well, those are tools for the end user. Let me talk about the workspace. Then you get essay and lab assignments. This is where we want to bring in what is going to be on that enterprise side, right? If I have to grade thousands of pages of multi-paragraph essays, large complex lab reports, multi-section course things, especially upper grade type of materials. That's a lot. But those tools can be set up in that enterprise level to look at all of that material. The big thing that started, literally 20, 25 years ago was spotting, where you might have something that there's a quote that's not properly cited. Okay, we can find those really quick. But also, is it meeting all the standards that are in my rubric? Is it addressing everything? Is it actually answering the question? Is it answering the question that they pose in their, when they started this thing out? All of that can be put in, and now I'm going to get the ability to actually go through and grade or get a suggestion in terms of how to review those thousands of submissions, and then I can go through and double check just the one pieces.
Yeah, and from a centralized perspective, the goal here would be to say, there are a lot of tools that you could use within Workspace, and people could invent their own solutions to these things. But because it's going to be things that matter, that are going to be used a lot, and you want that consistent across your organization. So that is where we do recommend that you are building those solutions, having an agent marketplace that people can go to download this, or just have the application sitting out there for people to use, versus people saying, I think I should be able to do this, and I'm going to create my own solution. It's awesome that people feel empowered to do that, but that's where the governance comes back in to say there's certain types of things we should have answer one time, have the AI community of practice come up with the solution instead of tens or hundreds of solutions.
Absolutely, and especially useful when you've got multiple people that are involved in the instruction of a particular topic. Well, how do we unify that rubric or one grading standard, just like this? And then advising, not going to go through all of them this time, but like the onboard coaching or because we love NotebookLM. So that advising session, advisors have to produce millions of notes, the degree, the audit, the correspondence. They've got to look at every single one of those. Well, if I plug them all into NotebookLM, all those things that a student is bringing in, I can say, once I've got all that material, summarize. One page, I'm done. Thank you. We're good. And again, one of the biggest advantages of NotebookLM, it can be prompted to flag things that are missing, and everything that it pulls out, it will create a citation that will take me right to those materials where it's getting that information. And again, we come back and we talk about, well, what about on the other level, on that enterprise level? Identifying students that are at risk of dropping out before midterm grades. Again, we're just using that large data set. Well, how do I look at that data set? And I want to be able to talk to these students or talk to these people before that midterm grade and that everybody drops out. I need to be able to address their issue. You know what? We get those predictive analytics. I look at all the different factors that are going in for my particular institution, my particular organization. And this is an issue. Let's call in these 8, 10, 15 people rather than having to deal with hundreds that are leaving because they happen to get a bad grade.
Yeah, and Peanut Gallery comment on this one is we list BigQuery as a technology being used for this. Really just a data management issue and privacy issue, and making sure that you're not surfacing things to users that aren't or should be seeing things. So as you start rolling out these solutions, making sure you've thought about the data quality, the relevance to what's being looked at, the privacy rules, all of those things, very important. Why we say that's really on the enterprise side of things, just to make sure you're able to govern and report on what's going on with those things.
Absolutely, absolutely. For the IT folks, hey, you know what? Creating that documentation. I love this part, right? Because when you've got to create that user-face documentation for new software or a new application that's being pushed out, I can put in all the technical specifications and say, create a how-to guide for this, include screenshots, and I'm going to get a really easy to edit rough draft. Might not be specific and perfect just yet. Everything is always going to be human in the loop, but I don't have to go back and write it all from scratch. And let me pause and say one of the big things that is a huge plus here is when I put these tools to use, it doesn't matter how I talk. If I'm talking to other technical people, obviously I'll start using language that my base user probably isn't going to be able to keep up with our conversation. So I'm talking about data feed rates and all kinds of other things. But when I use these tools, the tone, the language, the how we divide up our sentence structures, all those things can all be fed into the model. And so when we say, give me a how-to guide, that's what we're going to get. And we can go through that, and that it's nice, it's easy for everybody to understand, and it meets that consistent writing standard. So it doesn't matter if I do it or Doug does it or Daniel, I see him hiding over there. Whoever does, is actually running that that prompt we're going to get a document that is consistent. It's a huge plus.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in because I'm going to try to move us a little bit faster because we are running a little bit behind again. On the last one, the standard operating procedures is just as well here. When you're drafting these things, the nice things is you can use the AI tools to build knowledge articles. And yes, that can help your help desk, but you can also feed those into a chat bot so that you can prevent the number of queries coming into the help desk and answer the questions immediately. So there's a lot of things that we're trying to do internally. We're a reseller for over 100 clients, and surfacing things via a chatbot is something we're actively working on because we see the value of reducing the number of tickets and getting answers to our clients extremely fast. And we assume everyone else has that same opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So you just talk about, well, how am I going to get there, right? That's great information in terms of we've got a problem. How am I going to get there? Only 47% of people actually receive formal AI training. So how are we going to close that up? It only takes 90 days. Shorter if you can get a little time on top of it. So we're going to teach prompting through verification. We kind of have an idea of what we're looking for. We want to be able to apply those skills that and tie them directly into what people are actually doing, not just some generic, find like we used to do with a regular search engine. We want to encourage people and get them more trained on what to look for and verifying the output, not just blindly accepting, no matter how great our prompt is. There's all kinds of other influences to it. We want to make sure that we're looking at and verifying what that output is. And then reflect. Hey, especially when we're building that prompt library, we want to be able to come back and say, you know what, I think if we change this or if we update that, make sure that thing that changes. And then answering this last question down there at the bottom, say, what makes that AI generated answer trustworthy enough to use? And being able to think through that and answer that particular question. So we talked about that shadow use before. So you've got hidden, you've got unmanaged use, you've got this unmanaged risk. It becomes an issue because you're not sure, you're not able to manage any possible PITI data that's going out, and there's no audit trail. That's a problem. If we have a clear policy, it's visible, it's supported, it's shared, it's a managed risk. We can move it directly towards adoption. And again, that buy-in, because we're trying to build those prompt libraries. So we've got that consistency across not only our department and our job, but also the institution. Again, always coming back to, we're 2026 and we're still less than 75% for any of these things. So we just kind of like invented, this is actually data that we pulled together. Here are the averages. So what would this kind of medium look like? So you have a university or an organization of about 22,000 people, 90-day measurable workflow. We need 80%, like we mentioned, 88% of the staff is already using it, but 46% are trusted. So we want to use a phase program for getting rid of that demystification, training with simple, clear governance, getting that buy-in and closing that gap. Okay, because if only 47 people have had real AI training, we want to obviously improve that, but we want to make it applicable to what they're actually doing. So we like to move that in 90 days. You would expect to see just trust in the output, because I'm trusting myself, right? You taught me how to look for those things. Driving down that hidden use, moving that actually trained, and actually having a policy, because again, only about 40% of institutions right now have an actual governance policy there. So you got anything to add in here?
Just that there's really there's a student view and having a really clear governance policy. And I apologize to anyone who's not higher ed related, because most of our clients are, we're tailoring to that. But it applies regardless of employees and leaders to know what is acceptable use and then encourage those things. But if you're leaving it up to individual professors to say, this is what's acceptable in my class, I think there's going to be constant challenges. So advocating for a consistent set of rules on that, when it is appropriate, when it's not. And likewise, if professors are using it to grade papers and students aren't allowed it to use AI to help write the papers, there's obviously some just challenges about the clear messaging around that. And I think it's like the use of calculators in math class. It's like, yes, we want you to understand how to do it the hard way, and then later on you'll have tools, as long as there's consistency about that and clarity around when it's being used, and not have that hidden use for things that, oh yeah, you have the embedded comments in there that show that, oops, it was obvious I was using it and you said you weren't. That's never a good thing. So clarity around that is paramount.
Absolutely. And then, we're just going to pull somebody. This is Daniel. Daniel is the academic operations manager, and she's got a whole bunch of service requests, and she's trying to do some advising, some registration, work on some financial aid questions. And she's going to use some AI tools to draft that response, but she doesn't share that because there's no guidance. The process itself is not very clear. And more importantly, she might get a different answer for every single thing that she's doing because it's not centralized. It's not in, say, like a NotebookLM, where it's only using the specific resource materials. So she may look out and catch that outdated policy reference. That's fantastic. And she might have the ability to pull that out, but it slows down because we didn't catch, or we didn't talk about how to verify the AI output. We didn't explain what those citation notes mean in these various tools, or even how to prompt, hey, if anything doesn't match this, then call it out. That's something that we can actually get our people to prompt. So the takeaway here is that a lot of our people, they don't need more tools. What they need is the fluency, the guide rail, seeing where it applies, and permission to use AI on those familiar workflows. 5 months, 5 numbers. What we're hoping, the hope would be that everything gets fixed, is that people are looking. Small pilots actually work better. We know that they're not always possible, but they do work better, and they can spread out. Training and reskilling. Okay. Again, only 47% have had any training to build those hands-on skills. Governance, AI policy, make sure you set it, it's simple and clear, and scale what works. And this is, again, we're getting that buy-in from those workflows that people are familiar with. So that high value, high use, low risk workflows are the ones we want to tackle first. All right. Doug, did you want to do all the resources, or?
You can hit this one. I'll take over on the next one.
Cool. So resources for maintaining fluency. If you're going to share anything, share these with your folks. There are all kinds of resources available for your instructors or people that are involved in this, to include Google certification, Google Gemini certification, even so much it's actually for students. And right now, actually, those certifications are free. So digital skills, you've got the on-air TV. There's a live broadcast that's coming down from Google that deals specifically with Google for Education. There's the accelerator. There's all kinds of online courses. There we go. The EDU on air, that's for higher education specifically, so you get that practical application. And again, those certifications are available. They're not very difficult. I really would encourage people to look at those. All right.
All right, so we tried to theme some things where we've seen it in the wild, where we would say that this was a successful use of AI, because there's been, if you go back to the Harvard Business Unit study, that 95% of AI projects fail. And I think that was just a large part because it was brand new and people were trying a lot of things. They're trying to start big and didn't think about all the data governance. But these are things that we think are relatively easy ways to start small and scale fast. First and foremost, what we've seen is AI that connects the dots. So if there's a way to build AI into the applications to say, we're embedding the ability to pull data from previously disconnected applications, you can move things along much faster with those things. So the example here is there's a Grant AI solution that the Rapid Innovation team at Google created. And what it does is it allows people to go out and search across all of the granting agencies in the US government. And all you do, we like to say, AI is nothing but a box and a button. In the box, you put the research abstract for what you want to conduct. You hit the button and it goes and queries and does the best match against all of the grants that are available out in the US government, and says, this is your best match. For someone who's new to that space, to be able to get that answer immediately is pretty amazing. And that matching algorithm that we all know from just normal Google search can be leveraged for more complex searches across, find the best fit document, find the best case study that would be a good example of this, find someone who has struggled with this type of problem. We talked already about chatbots, making sure you have a curated data set. So use AI to pull the information about, create the knowledge article about this problem, and then feed that into your chatbot so you have confidence in those things, and ground it. The grounded part is say, we're only using this subset of information. And then the last couple here, rubric machines. If you want to compare something for grading, for quality, for this is a good idea of something to do research on, Google has tools called co-scientist, which are similar to this, to say you can test theories on things and use AI to quickly run through brainstorming of ideas and then judging those ideas against a rubric of what you're looking for. And it's something that would take hundreds of hours previously. So really cool things that you can do with that. And then anything that is just reduction in churn that Scott talked about earlier is like, what takes a majority of your time that you have to look stuff up, match things together, and it may be a lot of Boolean algebra that's really hard to code. But if you throw it at AI, it can give you things a lot quicker and move things along. So those are things that we've seen as successful. So if you're looking for something to pilot, these are 4 areas you might want to consider. And on our last slide, this is, we were trying to be careful, like this is not a sales pitch, but we want you to be aware. Google at Google Cloud Next announced that there's $750 million that they are making available to all of their partner community to help deploy agentic AI solutions. So if you're looking at things that are on that Gemini enterprise side of the house to say we can build something, there are funds available to help you do that. So whether it's Burwood or another provider, know that there are dollars available to help you do this, and you can do it without cost to you. So definitely talk to your favorite partner on that, because it is worth pursuing. And I believe this brings us to the end of our prepared statement. So please use the Q&A or chat for any questions you'd like to follow us up on.
We'll stick around for a few more minutes in case someone is typing out a question or thinking of something. But if you are ready to drop, thank you so much for joining. I will be sending out the slides and the recording so you can share with other people in your organizations, or take the great content that Scott shared, especially those resources he shared at the end. So thank you, everyone. And again, we'll be here for a little while longer. And Scott, it looks like you pulled up NotebookLM, so we can look at that together while we wait to see if there are questions. Oh, I think
Scott, you muted yourself.
Because it's available in so many of the different licensing platforms, really wanted, if you haven't had an opportunity or to take a look at this, NotebookLM is your friend, especially when it comes to these the studio pieces here for like creating infographics or creating quizzes or reports, or the mind mapping and the data tables. Just super powerful tools that all I have to do is bring in my resources. And one of the big things we really want to impress upon people with this particular tool is that while we can link it to other things, by itself, it is limited. When I ask it questions, it is limited to only the things that I have added to the notebook. So Great thing about NotebookLM is I don't have to worry about it hallucinating out on the internet and just pulling things at random. If it's not part of the resource set, it will not answer the question. It will not generate anything over here. None of that is going to happen. I can still prompt a little bit better to get it to call out when it's missing particular pieces of information, but it's one of my favorite features of this. And then again, when we do query with it, it will give me those little, this is where I'm getting that information from. So it's certainly one of the most powerful tools that is out there for general use. There's constantly bringing new features to it, and just wanted to make sure everybody got a chance to see it.
I think that's one of the tools that every time I use it, there's something brand new in it. So even if you're using it regularly, it's constantly evolving. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any questions. If you do have questions, you'll get an email from me. So if you think of something later and you'd love to ask Scott or Doug, feel free. I think, Scott, if you go to the next slide, I did also just want to point out at the end of this, we do have our 4 sales team members who support Google. So if you had very specific questions, they're also available. And so I'll send this out so you have their contact information as well. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a great day.